Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Tamalkov.
Hello, everyone. I am pleased to return and to the Leaders Who Care, and really honor, first of all the events that have happened in the last couple of weeks. For the ones affected, we are all supporting and praying for peace, and we believe soon things will unveil. And I really believe the future is for more. We need more leaders who care, making the world a better place, who understand people of the highest level and can work with them. And that is one of the reasons, in fact, which we are honored to be joined today by Dr. Alden Cass, who actually is a licensed clinical psychologist, but also author of the Bullish Thinking, really working with some of the most difficult environments and working with some of the highest performers in Wall Street, understanding some of the challenges and difficulties people are having to go through. Welcome, first of all, and thank you for making it today and really giving your time. Really, we honor your work, Dr. Alden.
Oh, thank you so much, Marian. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm fortunate that we're able to communicate across countries to really help and heal those who are feeling really scared and apprehensive at the present time.
Well, thank you indeed. And well, first of all, there's so many questions, of course, that are coming out on that. But maybe a quick intro of how did you decide or arrived rather to where you are today in terms of the key events in your life? Because I have also had the privilege to talk to some of the highest performers of the world, earning hundreds of millions, if not billions. And it's not easy when you've been in a position of power, when you transition to a new thing, what do you do next? So there's moments of life that are key and critical. What do you do after you've been the president of the most powerful country in the world, for example? That's a key moment. So I know you see a lot of that in your experience in history, people in transition or people in difficult moments. So maybe we're starting with you. How did you kind of find your journey to be here and to do what you do?
Well, my story starts way back when I was in graduate school, getting my doctorate in clinical psychology, and one of my best friends from childhood, who was around 24 years old at the time, started working at a broker dealer for a financial investment firm. And over a 6-month period, I noticed that his personality started to change. And when we would have phone calls, he would curse a lot. He would get very angry for no reason. One time he threw a phone at the wall. And I was like, this is not the fun-loving guy who always used to make jokes. Like, what happened to him? And I said to myself, you know what? Personality is not supposed to change in 6 months. That doesn't happen. And I actually started to say to myself, well, wait a second, is it possible that he's experiencing some form of clinical depression or emotional burnout? And I looked in the literature in psychology and found that there was really very little research done on the mental health of stockbrokers back then. And this is 1999 at the time. And I realized that he was suffering from a clinical major depression at the age of 25 that was brought on 6 months into working for a broker dealer and dealing with, and was, he didn't have the coping skills requisite to deal with that kind of stress. And I said, well, this is probably a bigger problem than ever expected. And I knew from my experience with working with financial advisors and brokers that there was a stigma on Wall Street about showing weakness, showing your feelings, admitting that you needed help. And when I did my research, which was the first clinical investigation on the mental health of stockbrokers in the last 50 years, when I did this in 1999, it was really shocking to see that many of these individuals that I interviewed with clinical assessments couldn't wait to open up about their feelings. They felt so relieved to tell somebody that they weren't feeling good and that their head was spinning. And I, was at an early embryonic stage of my career, and I was like, wow, I have to be the guy to do this and help these guys and make it feel more empowering to get help as opposed to scary. And that's where I, started to develop protocols specific to Wall Street executives that was written up in their language using cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. I would change the words to be more Wall Street like so that they would feel more comfortable with it. That's how I developed the bullish thinking paradigm, which is the title of my book. And, coupled with my clinical psychology degree, I started to also do performance coaching, which helps, individuals set goals and achieve goals, while also helping them understand how emotions play a huge part in success, in creating emotional discipline, helping people have greater conviction in their process of success, as well as to help them remain resilient when things go against them or when times are uncertain. And we sure are dealing with a lot of uncertain times in our lives now, and that's really helping me help people now more than ever.
Well, you said a very interesting, how a personality is changing, and is so when people are getting more aggressive, but they were not normally like that, does it mean that this is a sign that we need to be aware of, or that they may need actually more support? Because I'm really interested in the well-being and health of those individuals that are at the highest level, and I'm not judging them in any shape or form, but because we all have these moments. But if they're well, and if they're returned to the state of really a good state and a good well-being, they impact a lot of families and lives of people, because they normally run teams, they run companies, they run, in some cases, multi-billion empires. So the question is, how what are the signs for us to from your study that we need to be aware of, and when that happens, how to react if we're on the receiving end?
Well, you'll tend to see some stark changes in behavior that happen, overnight, almost a real change in performance, whether it's not showing up to work, showing up late, screaming, yelling. There's people who are going through, whether it's burnout or sometimes depression, they become more irritable and hypersensitive to criticism, and they become much more difficult to work with. And it's, again, we're looking at stark changes, not gradual, but where someone's really flipped a switch and they're not acting themselves anymore, and they're not performing the way they used to. And that is worthy of trying to make sure that you sit down those individuals and say, hey, I've noticed this is going on. Is there something I need to know of that I could be helpful with in getting you through this rough time?
I love that, because often if we react with the aggressive way or the way they're doing, that's going to aggravate and escalate. But if you, as you say, be supportive, caring, hug them in a way and say, hey, I'm here to help you out if there's anything I can do, then normally that is exactly the way forward. And sometimes it's difficult, because even with, I experience with my own child, for example, sometimes, you say things, they don't listen, but there's a reason that they might be going through something. But when you start to understand those dynamics, the communication improves massively. It's not that they don't listen, they're into doing something. So I think really that is a great advice and lesson. Tell us really, what is the I guess one of the most interesting or story or an example that really you had to face dealing with a case or situation from your experience?
Regarding which Like, what area?
So, or like, when it was somebody in an area that it was in a very difficult state or a moment, and you had to really kind of help out, but also that resulted into a real, a tangible kind of transformation.
Well, every day that I show up for work, I face that with my clients. Each
Wow.
individual one has a story that, involves getting through a rough time, a setback, one area of their lives that is not working for them in the moment, that I have to help them achieve their bottom line goal, which is to improve that variable in their life. So I mean, literally from marriage issues to getting through drug addiction or, performance at work, being on a performance improvement plan, being told you need to improve your performance, not getting your bonus. All of those issues are common ones that I help people through. How to get promoted, what's my next step in my life, dealing with my kid that's acting out. There's never a day that I don't have those types of stories. So probably the most impactful event that I've experienced in my career that really speaks to me about leadership, caring leadership, but how to, leadership in the face of insane amounts of uncertainty, the real storms and the grays of life that are very hard for people to sit with when you're panicked and anxious, just like we're living through these really unprecedented times in our global world, between war and inflation and gas prices going up, things that people have not been ready for. We're all reeling right now and trying to see through the fog to see what's after. The best story I can think of is when I was hired to go work for a money management fund. They did a retreat, and it was on a huge yacht out off the coast of South Florida. And I was working with this whole team on my bullish thinking paradigm, dealing with stress management, helping them become more cohesive as a group. And as we were leaving for the day and heading back to the shoreline in the boat, the CEO of the company was driving the boat, actually. And he, all of a sudden we were on the boat, and I remember the skies got really dark and and then I started to see thunder. I heard thunder, saw a lightning bolt, and I was like, oh boy, this is not going to go well. And all of a sudden, some of the employees and staff got really panicked and freaked out. Rain started coming down, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. And the waves were picking up, the wind was picking up, and I will never forget the CEO and how he handled this moment. Was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in terms of being a captain, not only a captain of that ship, but a captain for his employees. He was at the helm the entire time, never wavered, never took his eye off of what was up ahead, because you could barely see what was up ahead. All you could feel was the rain coming down and the waves, crashing. He basically explained to some of his employees that they needed to sit down and some go underneath and into the boat, especially the scared ones. And he actually delegated down to me, as almost created me as his lieutenant in that moment, to keep people calm. And, once I calmed myself down, I was able to do that. But
put your mask first.
Right. And I was really amazed at how he never wavered. He never winced. He never got nervous. And he just plowed through that water with no fear. He had like ice in his veins. And the employees saw that. He had me doing the talking work in terms of giving people space to be nervous and anxious, and me being able to reassure them, look at what we're doing here. Look, there's an opening there's a clearing in the sky there. We should be good soon. we've made it through the hardest parts so far. These were very encouraging things I was able to say to those people. And together as a team, we all got through that, made it to shore. And I'll tell you what, I've never had to do this before, but at the end of that, they paid me for that workshop, but I hired them as my financial advisory group going forward. And because I want that guy managing my money. And that is a real mark of a leader who can manage the rough waves of life the way he did.
I love that story, Alden, and this was really, wow, what an example. And we need really more of that, especially now, today. And what would be your advice to leaders that are right now experiencing such a turbulence?
Well, it's exactly like my story said. You got to keep your eyes ahead of you on the clearing from that fog. You have to continue to do what you know how to do to make your company successful, your business successful. Keep your foot on the gas. But at the same time, the leaders have to delegate down to other people to help them, to help the rest of the staff. Give the staff an opportunity to speak of their feelings, their anxiety, their apprehensions about coming back to work after the pandemic, after hearing what's going on TV with the way the media is portraying things, the war going on in the Ukraine and how that's making people feel. Employees need to know that it's a safe place to even bring that topic up or their nerves about it, about returning to work during such uncertain times. And, that's the sign of a good leader is when you can create an open door policy where your employees don't feel like you're hitting yourself. You have to show that you are the captain of the ship and you can be their rock. And that's kind of what I've had to do for my clients, both internationally and domestically, because thankfully with, one of the silver linings of the pandemic was the remote work that I've been able to do with people all across the world to take advantage of this coaching and therapy opportunity to get well and to achieve their goals through these uncertain times.
I love that. As you pointing out, caring leadership is bringing certainty in uncertain times.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to understand, focus on what's beyond the crisis, give hope and inspiration to people that this will be over one day, sooner or later it will come, and have the resilience to go through, because sometimes the challenge comes when it's for a very long time, the prolonged. Because that requires, I guess, a different, and you had to deal with cases of this kind. How to deal with situations where they require resilience? It's not just over in a week or two. What are the things that require over a longer period of time in order to provide that, to be the light in the darkness, to be that kind of hope for people?
Well, one of the elements of my bullish thinking mindset is to find what we call cognitive anchors. And these are anchors, are examples, they're facts, they're data from your past, your historical past, your performance from your past, the past of other people that you might know. But they are examples or examples of situations where a person or yourself has gone through similar or worse prolonged periods of setbacks that you've overcome, and to remind yourself in the moment of those times, anchoring yourself back to those times so that you feel like you have a lifeline when you're overwhelmed with that fear and anxiety or sadness or hopelessness, that you've been through worse before. You've been through equivalently bad times, or of people who have had the same experience, but look at where they are now, and reassuring yourself that you will get through this as you've done before. History is the best predictor of future performance. So, basically using your past as an anchor to feel better, feel more stable in the future. That's the best course of action. And that's one of the things that I do with people when I help them monitor their thoughts. We do something called Bullish Thinking Thought Monitoring Logs, which are homework assignments rooted in the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, that they identify specific events that are triggering them to feel very overwhelmed, and putting their thoughts down on paper, putting their thoughts under a microscope, their self-talk in the moment, and their reactive thinking, their victimized thinking, really their worst case scenario catastrophic thinking that's very black and white and not productive, that creates for them negative emotion at high intensities of that negative emotion, and then problems in their performance. And basically, by having this down on paper, you put your thoughts under a microscope and say, this thinking is not helpful, it's not adaptive, and we call those bearish thoughts. And by putting them under a microscope, you can then circle words that are particularly problematic. And then on the bullish thinking side of that thought log, they can actively challenge the validity of those first thoughts that have led to those negatively and intense feelings that they're experiencing, which are affecting their performance. And by nullifying and negating the validity of those extreme black and white bearish words that they've used in their thought content, you can actually impact and affect a change in how you feel, and thus improving your performance as a result. So it's a mind exercise that over time, if you practice, can actually change the neurochemistry of your brain, and can treat depression and anxiety disorders almost equivalently as medication.
That is a very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And if we, just for the ones who've never read about the book Bullish Thinking, what are the kind of key milestones or areas, chapters that maybe you can share here that they should look for in the book?
Well, for the most part, this book is written to financial advisors and traders. However, in my practice of both corporate attorneys, athletes, people in the entertainment industry, dentists, people of all walks of life, from Wall Street to Main Street, this book has widespread applications, because it's the same mindset for getting through and analyzing situations that are out of your control. So the first 3 chapters of the book really talk about those thought monitoring logs, the anchors, the things to look out for burnout and depression, and when to get help. And then later on in the book, there's more talk about setting boundaries and being more assertive, learning skills and scripts for actually getting what you want from others and being heard by others, which is a very important skill for leaders to have when managing a business and dealing with difficult clients. And, that's also within that book. But for the most part, this book is about helping people understand that there is some control during times of uncertainty, and that control is how you perceive that uncertainty. Two people can perceive the same setback completely differently, one being more positive and adaptive and the other being more negative and bearish and irrational and catastrophic in thinking, and they will have 2 different outcomes in terms of their performance, just based on how they're perceiving that situation. So perception is everything when it comes to overall performance and how you feel on a given day-to-day basis. And we do have control over that. We can't let environmental stressors run our days, run our mornings, and chart the course for our own futures.
I'm just really thinking and reflecting on a lot of the things. Thank you, first of all, for sharing that. And I definitely would recommend people that are interested in really understanding how to get a better comprehension of themselves and how to deal with those strategies and techniques, to take a look at bullish thinking. There's so much value in the book. And thank you for sharing that, Dr. Alden here. When it comes down to looking at people and looking at the other side, the best practices, have you come across, or I guess you've come across many leaders, but what are the best examples of leadership where they have it all, or if that means have it all, they're exceptionally doing well in many, if not all, areas of their life? and if so, what are those? What are the kind of uh, what makes that happen? What that makes that work? Because it's when I see leaders, sometimes they're doing very well in financially very well, but they may not be control of their time because there's a lot of things going on, and they've organized it in a such a way that the time. And I know if you're on a deathbed today, you won't be asking for more money or more friends. You'll be asking for more time. And that sometimes if you find somebody that has the financial abundance, but also free time, or not free time, but in control of their time, they decide where to spend it. So in that, sometimes maybe other areas, like they may not be in peace with themselves, they may have that inner worry, or being insignificant and not loved, for example, or whatever that may be, or have you had a case where you really had, or seen someone that pretty much has all this in their life?
Well, I could tell you that there's very few individuals that would be self-actualized enough to continue to want to be in therapy and get coaching when everything in their life is that perfect. So I'd say that there's probably a very
Very few, yeah.
small percentage of CEOs that have everything perfect. I mean, even some of the wealthiest CEOs of the largest companies in the world are on their third marriages. So, most of these guys are very successful or women are very successful in their careers, but then have problems with relationships. You see that all the time. It's very rare that in my practice I see someone who has it all, but I do see it, and I do find it, really. It's an amazing feeling of respect that I can garner for these individuals when they have been able to achieve their goals for their career and their life, and know when they've reached that peak, and to say to themselves, I'm really good here. I can get better here, but getting better for me is giving more time to my family and giving more time to charity. And hey, I want to start this other new little side gig that means something to me because it's not about money. Those are the people that really can say to themselves at the end of the day, they've got it all. Is when you can get to that place where you can call your own shots, show up when you want, and you don't have to think about your bank account. I mean, that, and your relationships are solid. You still have somebody that you can come home to every night, and kids that are respectful. And, it's about being able to diversify your emotional energy into multiple avenues in your life, and not being tunnel vision just on work. And you see that all too often, the tragedies in marriages, when it's all about work and not about family or the relationships.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because this brings hope to people, to listeners, because I believe that is possible, and we live in a time where I wouldn't say necessarily with the war the best time, but technically it is the best time in terms of opportunities of all times, where you have a lot of information that we can access, to understand, to learn, to study. So you could really have everything. But the problem is there's so much information that people don't know, and especially that are starting out. Because for me, when I look at life, I look at it in 4 seasons. The first season is, if we take an average life span of 100 years of age, which some people don't get to live that long, of course, but first season is season of learning. When you're starting out, you understand what are the principles of life, how to really understand when you press this button, that what happens. What are the key relationships I need to have in my life, which are starting from divine connectors that will connect you to opportunities, or people of influence, financial, economical, sociological, every area of life. Exceptionally gifted people is a third category, because if you're surrounded by exceptionally gifted people, your life and journey will become much more enjoyable, so you can have more free time to do other things. And a third and a fourth category is people that will be with you no matter what. They will be with you not because of your vision, not because of your wealth, but just, and if they caught you doing something wrong, they'll come next to you and say, hey, hey, what's going on? I want to help you here. Really, and if you have ideally 10 of those people, and that's probably, some people say I don't even have one, which is, never mind, 10, you're probably the luckiest person of your generation. So when you look at life in that direction, and the second season is execution. So you're starting out, hey, I'm going to make some big strides from 25 to 50 years of age. By now I've decided, I've learned the principles, I understand what to do, like what you're describing, really that kind of personality. And then you can go and enjoy, obviously, the third season, where you go into prepare your legacy and succession from 50 to 75. We have all the resources, everything that is wisdom. You got everything lined up, and you prepare a lot of people to understand those principles so they can enter the season of execution. And of course, the fourth season, you go around and enjoy all of those seeds that you planted around, and people that are operating the highest level, and they honor you for everything you've done. That's how I see life. For me, it's sometimes people go into difficult moments, because often they don't know who they are. They don't know what their strengths are. They don't know what their passion is, what recharges them, and that's okay. You can find out. There's a way to do that. I always say, kind of, if they are able to align and invite their mind and heart on a cup of coffee or a drink, relaxed, and say, hey, let's align here. Let's see what we go. What do we want? To kind of be together. Because when people are in the wrong jobs, or with the wrong people, that's when the problems often comes. And they either get into cross motivation, or if they stay for too long in that, then problems comes and diseases come. That's why I recommend people to get out when the situation is like this. I mean, anyway, that's my experience from my. I'm not a psychologist, but you know better in your areas of expertise. But I'm very passionate of how can we help people when they're at moment of not knowing what exactly they want next, or who they really are. What should they do at that moment? What would be your advice?
Well, again, part of the enjoyment and excitement about life is not knowing how the story ends. And too often people get caught up in analysis paralysis, fear of not knowing how things are going to end up for them. And they actually kind of fortune tell, which is a cognitive error, and they start to make up stories that, oh my God, I'm always going to be like this. I'm always going to have this job. Sometimes in life, that script just happens by you taking a step out of your house in the morning. Every day is an opportunity. Sometimes it's a matter of inches or seconds that makes a difference. In terms of, it's a combination of luck and skill that gets you to where your next place of work might be. Being at the right place at the right time. But I'll tell you, you're never going to find that right place or time if you're doing it from your bedroom. So
if you're not prepared, what you're saying, prepare to meet that right time.
Every day is your next opportunity. It's the law of averages that would state that each new day that comes, even if it's a failure by your standards of not having reached your goal on that day, that next day is you're bringing yourself one step closer to landing it, or having that company call you back for the job interview. You've just got to throw the darts and keep going, and knowing that, one of them will eventually hit, but that story has not been written. And that's the part of life that you have to embrace, is not knowing and being excited for that next day. Because it's really, every day that phone can ring and it's a new opportunity. And that's how I live my life. Every day, I have the most bizarre, random calls and emails of opportunities that come, and it's exciting to not know what could happen tomorrow, what I could hear about.
Well, thank you for reminding us this. To be honest, that is really a great reminder that every day, we are lucky to have it if we live in that day, and we should really embrace it and look at it that way. So thank you for sharing that. That is okay not knowing, and that's just a simple trigger for people that in their mind. And there's a couple of things that are particularly difficult, especially when we look at uncertainty, and now in a wartime, even though the people may not be affected directly, they're affected by the media, by what's happening, by the empathy, and this is perfectly normal, even at the highest level. And you mentioned earlier that some of those techniques, but that may be helpful. What is your advice to anyone really, not doesn't have to be a leader but really people in general, how some technique or some way to deal with that uncertainty in this moment in the current events with the war in Ukraine?
Well, when you're indirectly involved,
or directly, in fact.
Right, or directly. I mean, but it's easy to feel like you have, when you're not on the battlegrounds, you really have not much you can. You might feel like you have nothing you can do to help the situation. But I guess I've seen it be helpful for certain individuals is to do what they can from getting the word out. I mean, one of the most, amazing parts of living in the United States, our government is that in a democracy is that we have a freedom of speech and freedom to assemble. And, this is an opportunity. If it makes someone feel empowered, someone feel like they can actually affect some form of change, even if it's indirectly, is to get your message out. You're allowed to, and it makes a person feel better to know that they've done something, whether it's a charitable donation or, even, doing a podcast to help people who are there to get through as they're sitting, in their basements, trying to protect their families. I mean, these are all anything you can do to feel like you can affect a change as an individual. That's important, because it's very easy to get caught up in the belief that you can't do anything and you're powerless to change. And, one of the things that I always teach my clients is that all it takes is one positive thought to wipe out an entire army of negative ones. And that's what I think is the important lesson here is that it's only one positive action that you can do in the moment to make yourself feel like you can make all that, darkness go away for the moment.
Thank you. Really means a lot, and you're absolutely right. I've experienced it a number of times. My personal way of dealing with uncertainty or negative thoughts is just take an action. And when the action is taken, you often will see some positive results more often than not, to be honest. And that can defeat further negative thoughts because you're seeing the impact of your actions rather than just staying powerless.
Motion creates positive emotion is the saying I use. And, action is the greatest antidote for paralysis.
No, thank you for that. We have a couple of questions here from one of the listeners. One of the first one is from Angel. Thank you for Angel Gorgokov. Thank you for asking, to what extent is your work aligned with the ancient Stoic philosophy in terms of fortitude and virtues?
I'm not really sure what the ancient Stoic philosophy is. So, I mean, I know what fortitude and virtues are, but, I mean, fortitude for me is strength. And strength is about resilience and being able to be mindful in the moment when things go against you and use and harness your thoughts to control your emotions. And, virtue, I mean, is doing it all, believing from both a moral and philosophical standpoint, using everything from religion, religious beliefs. Everything can be a part of this. a success formula in terms of how you get through things and what you anchor your thoughts back to make yourself feel better in the moment when things are going against you. So I'm not sure if I answered that question, but
No, thank you. It's really attempting it. Of course, that's a whole nother topic on stoicism and their philosophy. Highly recommend, by the way, to see from the ancient when you have a time. But there's another question that Angel was asking for the bullish therapy specifically was from what you mentioned the bullish therapy is influenced from the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, in which in turn adopts the Stoic principles. So that's what he's kind of referred to
okay.
On that point. So well, thank you really for sharing those examples. And a really difficult thing I found personally, but I'm sure a lot of leaders have their own techniques or challenges, is how to switch your mind when it's focused on something, whether this is a current problem at war, or you're facing a issue with your marriage, or facing issue with a colleague or a company that you're working with. It's not easy to switch when something is not working. What is your recommendation and advice for that, for such a situation? Because the mind is very powerful, and you mentioned one positive thought can wipe out a series of negative thoughts, but it still it goes on the back burner. It stays when something is not right, but you cannot fix it or resolve it right away.
But that's the key thing. What actions can you take to fix it? What can you do today to better this problem? I don't think you should necessarily hide from these issues as they happen and try to distract yourself and pretend that there's nothing bad happening. I think that you should actually go after that problem until you can feel better that you've taken a step. It doesn't have to be a complete step, but a baby step towards resolving it. And every day that would be my mission, because that's what's going to make you feel better, not hiding from it or distracting yourself from a problem. It's what am I doing to feel better about that I've taken a step towards resolving it. Most problems in life can be resolved, and therefore there are actions you can take. So I would, if I get a bad letter in the mail from the IRS or I owe money or something, I call my accountant within 5 minutes. I don't sit with that feeling of anxiety. I take an action when an action is available to me. As far as I'm concerned, the only things that, in life you sometimes can't, solve sometimes is taxes and cancer. And these are things that, you can't take back and change, but there's a lot in life that you can. And that's what I hold on to. I focus on things I can change, not things that I can't. And that's what I preach to my clients as well.
Well, thank you so much for this. It's very helpful. And just to kind of wrap it up here and thinking of what, for people in leading positions, what help they most need. Really, people that some of your clients, and often they may be leading a team, but what is the type of help that will most help people or leaders in today's world?
Well, when you say what is the type of help, what do you mean by that? Can you be more specific?
So just trying to think of if you're a leader of an organization and you have a team, how your team can help you have it all, as we talked about. How can it support a leader, today's leaders, in being a really better leaders, in making a profound impact, or really performing and excelling in what they do? Because
a lot of this is involved in picking a good team in the first place. Leaders only as good as the team that he creates or he or she creates for themselves. And that means that they can delegate down responsibilities that free up time for that leader to not only do what they are good at, their skill set calls for as a leader in developing a business or branching out or expanding or, bettering the business. But, you need people who can help you be more efficient and effective. And, one of the other things that's important is for a leader to be able to show their staff more about who they are, what makes them tick, what are the best ways to communicate with them and the worst ways to communicate with them, so that they hear what they're talking about. So you create a more dynamic flow of conversation and communication. The best leaders today over communicate, especially in a world where people are working hybrid, remote, and they have to over communicate with their staff about events, what's going on, things that are going to affect their employees, and create a safe place for employees to say the same thing back to the leader, so that there are no surprises. Surprises are what makes leadership very difficult. Then no leader wants surprises. So that is the mark of great leadership, is to create a team that there's that over communication as a philosophy, and picking people who you can delegate down to, just like that captain, that CEO delegated down to me as his lieutenant on that boat ride off the coast of Florida, to do the talking to the people, to keep people calm, so that he could do what he needed to do to get us to shore.
You really touched a very very important string here, and since I had a privilege to work with some great leaders around the world, you're absolutely right. You've nailed it. It comes in first place that being surrounded by exceptionally gifted team makes a profound difference to your performance, your well-being, and really financial prosperity, success in every area of that you operate. Very important how you communicate with them in order to retain that team. That's key, and how you take care of the team. And what you're discussing is creating that safety, that environment is critical. And often, as here in Dynamics, we help leaders fulfill their vision by exactly that, help surrounding them by extraordinary or exceptionally gifted leaders. That is a key, but often you need to do other things to retain that team and have it for a very long time. And you mentioned leaders don't like surprises. You're right. They would love to kind of anticipate things. They would love to feel, and I think you've touched here. So maybe that's for the team of people that are working with other leaders, is probably improve communication on all levels, not only from the top down, but also from the team perspective as well. If they're able to communicate better, because even if the leader is busy and not over communicating, as you're saying, as a style at this stage, they would appreciate an honest, frank conversation. I think that is highly, if it's delivered in the right way, of course, and is not disrespectful, I think that will make a profound difference. So really appreciate that sharing this, because I've really thought for a moment, leaders love kind of to make a difference. They care about a team in most cases, of course, and that's the key to retaining great talent, but also attracting it. Yes. Over communicating, visualizing. One of the keys that I could share from our experience how to attract this type of team is really they will need to understand who you are and what's your vision. How do you treat people? Is that scalable, what you look at, and who is the team I'm going to be working on? And then they'll look at other practicalities. What are of course, values is very important. Flexibility, compensation, but these come more in the latter parts if you have the other kind of areas covered, which I think is essential how we do this due diligence, both on the person that you're hiring, but also on the company you're joining. There's a lot of value in this. Well, it's been a great, really, to have you today, Alden. Thank you so much for making the time. A really final remark and comment. What is your vision or wish for a more caring or better world? What is your kind of positive thought for the future, as you said? How do you see the world?
Well, I see the world as, we're facing a perfect storm all together as a unified front, and we've had world wars before, we've had pandemics before, and we've overcome them as a humanity. So all I can anchor myself to is the fact that the history will prevail, and we will see a brighter day, and things will shake out to a place where we will all be back to normal. And I always feel like these things are there's a lot of learning experiences that come from these, a lot of wake-up calls, a lot of lessons that we can take from hard times and scary times and times of uncertainty, that will make us stronger as a world in the future. So I mean, I can only hope that that there doesn't have to be as huge a price to pay as we're already seeing in terms of lives lost to learn these experiences. But we will get through this. And all you can do every day is put one foot in front of the other and try to do what you can to feel better that you can help your cause. And that's all you can do.
Keep spreading that positivity, Aaron, and just sending those positive thoughts to the world. We will get through it, and a lot of goodness is coming out of this crisis. I'm sure of it. It's just a matter of time and being united and doing the best we can at this moment in time. Thank you so much, and really wish you well in what you do, and God bless you and your family and everything we do.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for spreading this word of hope and peace and positivity. We can get through this together.
Thank you so much.